watching your documentary was like, for me, it was really powerful. You being there in 1989 on the Larsen ice shelf, and it's just not there anymore.
All the major expeditions I did, you can't do them anymore because the routes don't exist, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you're a legend. You're a hero.
Because when you crawl into a sleeping bag at night at 40 below, that thing is probably about 20, 25 below inside. And your body now has to heat that temperature up.
And you did that for 220 days straight.
I like more than anything just being present in the nature. And so on these expeditions, my safety relies on being, as long as I'm in the moment, I'm okay.
What is your perspective on climate and renewable energy as we move forward? You're optimistic? All right, we're back. Yet another Sounds of Solar podcast and videocast. How many of you watch us out there? You should leave a comment somewhere in the general vicinity of the video. Anyway, Russ, how are you doing today? Well, first of all, I'm your host, Christoph Brun. Along with me, Russell Hamilton. That was a spoiler. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Will Steger. Greetings.
Good to be here.
Welcome to the Sounds of Solar podcast.
Yeah.
Well, as is customary on the show, we usually kind of just talk about what happened this last weekend. And Russ, did you get the sprint car yet or no?
No. So spring. I'll go get it in the spring.
Okay.
I'm not driving a truck and trailer over the mountains during the wintertime.
Okay.
So still working on the list of things I need to get. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's in progress. It's gonna take a year.
Yeah.
So
you should take Will and have an expedition out to California and
there we go.
Get the sprint car. Will, did you do anything notable this weekend?
Last weekend we went up to cut ice up in Ely, which is
for your ice
harvest.
Yes,
yeah.
And which is for your root cellar.
Yeah, so I live in the wilderness, and we've been cutting ice for almost 50 years up there, since '68. So it's a big event. We get about maybe 50, 60 people come in town from the town of Ely come out. We have 4 horses. And so what we do is we cut blocks of ice out of the lake, and then with the horses we bring it up to the ice house. We put the ice in the ice house with sawdust, and that's our refrigeration for the rest of the year. So we use the blocks of ice. The ice the ice will keep in the cellar till the next winter when we end up throwing out blocks. I mean, it's an old-fashioned way of how people used to do it. But,
right.
But it's a good exercise, a nice winter event.
So when you're cutting the ice out, are you using chainsaws or is it like
by hand?
By hand.
Yeah.
And what are the tools like when you're doing
big
that?
Hands. The big saw is about 6 feet tall, so it's about 6 saws. So it's a lot of work for
one person, or you
one
get 2
person
people
on the saw.
Wow.
Then you flip the blocks out, and it's
cow.
labor intensive, but we have plenty of labor there.
Yeah.
Horses and we usually do that this season in February when it's nice and cold, which below zero is always up at Ely.
Well, how was this last weekend in Minnesota was it kind of warmed up finally. We had a really sharp cold snap. And so decent conditions then?
Yeah, the conditions were good. It's still cold up there, but it's getting above freezing now. So then I live up. I'm originally from Minneapolis, and then my real home, I moved out of the city in 1970 in Ely. So I spent my winters down here the last 20 years working on nonprofit work and connections, and then I go north, usually up in March and April.
Nice. And you said you've been wintering or you said May to September roughly, right?
Yeah,
in
I
St.
winter
Paul?
down in the banana belt here in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And I come down usually end of September, and I'm here till April.
Sure. Okay. Yes. You kind of alluded to starting off moving up to Ely in 1970, and you bought some land there and built the cabin, and maybe just take us through that time up to when you did the Arctic exploration.
Yeah. I was raised down here, family of 10 kids, and my dad was an entrepreneur, fought in the war, came back, started a business, whole thing. But he gave us, our parents gave us a lot of freedom to do pretty much what we wanted to. And the rule was, if you want to do something, you had to pay for it.
Sure. That's a good rule, I think.
Yeah, I know. So I ran with that freedom. Started climbing when I was 16. I bought a hemp rope out of a hardware store, checked a book out of the library. There's nobody climbed in those days, so I learned myself. And when I was 15, I took a motorboat down with my older brother. I recruited. Tom was 17, and I took my motorboat, the 16-foot boat, down to Mississippi, down to New Orleans and back.
Oh, wow.
So so I had a lot of freedom.
Wait, so okay, that
How old were you?
15.
15?
How long did that take you?
Well, it was easy to get downriver, but it took forever to get back up.
And you had a motor on this,
Yeah,
right? You
motor,
said?
yeah.
What was the motor you had on it? Like
Evan
a
Road-
5-horse Johnson?
No, 40, but, the rules were, all our money went into the gas. And
Oh, yeah.
we really had to hit up the priest and other people along the way to
Yeah.
get food.
Yeah.
It was a good trip. It was a Huck Finn trip.
I mean, seriously, yeah, that is what that is.
So I came from a background of freedom and not seeing barriers, and that's what really made my life. Because I had a pretty good vision as a younger kid. I knew ever since I can remember I wanted to live in the wilderness, clear land, build a cabin, and I bought land when I was 19 up in Ely. It was 3 miles from the road. I lived 25 miles. I lived 25 years off-road when I first moved up there. So I lived, the old-fashioned way, 12 years without electricity. And I started a winter school using dog sleds and skis to make a living. And that got me into dogs, eventually into dog sled expeditions. So my life has been consistent with adventure expeditions and also education. That was my what you'd call a vocation when you were younger. What's your vocation? What are you going to do for your livelihood? So I stayed down in the city long enough to get my degrees, my master's in education, and I taught 3 years for experience. I wanted to be a certified teacher so I could do my own program. And then in 1970 I split from the city, and I was in good terms with the city. It wasn't a reaction. I had a lot of friends down here. Really liked the city life, but I really wanted to live in the wilderness, so I left there and then, made my go up in Ely, Minnesota. So that was a really great move.
How did you decide on Ely? I mean, of all the, I went to school in the Arrowhead region. I went to UMD and formed my own love for that area. And there's so many beautiful places. What was it about Ely that kind of drew you
I was
in
a
there?
real doer as a young kid. I still am, and I had the intention of looking for land. So I actually went up looking when I was 18, 19. North Shore, I looked all over the North Shore in the country. I wasn't interested in Lake Superior, but I wanted to be in the isolate. But there wasn't a lot of wilderness land there. I knocked on doors and restaurants and bars and everything. So I headed up to Ely this one day, up by Highway 1, and I'd never been in Ely before. I stopped at a resort and asked them, where do I find wilderness property? So he said, talk to this realtor, Bill Trigg, and, ended up finding what I was looking for. It was $1,000, which was a lot of money. Tuition at St. Thomas then was $650 a year. I had to pay for that, and that was so it wasn't cheap. People think, oh, that's cheap. No, it took me years and
adjusted for inflation. Jordan, can you run that number?
No, so it was that whole thing. I had a really great, all the way through my life. It was great. I pretty much did. I created my own life and my own community, but my vocation in education was important to me. I didn't see myself as a classroom educator. I was dyslexic. I had a hard time with studies because of that, but I still worked hard because I knew I had to get that straight education. It was just, obviously, it was important to me. And then I applied that education more when I ran my school. Then I ended up, as you probably know, I developed a number of nonprofits. I developed lots of curriculum and higher level, type education, and national level standards and that. So I would say in education, my real career was program developing. I would develop programs rather than going in a classroom. And I did a lot of, I always talked to, down here in the city, I used to do 100 talks a year. And that was mostly all free. I made my living presentations, writing, and photography. One of those careers you could make a living in. And then I always designed clothing for the major companies, North Face, Patagonia, and that. So that's,
I didn't realize that.
That was my livelihood, my money. And then I made money in the school.
Sure.
You don't make money on expeditions. Expeditions are.
That was when. So we watched the after Antarctica.
After Antarctica,
and I watched this with my girlfriend Carly. Hi,
Watch
Carly.
it if you haven't seen it. Absolutely amazing.
And she was wondering, how does how do you make money at an expedition? I was like, well, I don't think that's the money-making operation.
Yeah, the expedition doesn't. I mean, I've made very little money on any expedition. I always came in. I mean, you're facing, I've got debts sometimes $200,000 or $300,000 at the end of an expedition.
Yeah.
I've got to work off. It's a lot of risk, and most people aren't. Most people don't take risks. They're comfortable in their zone, and that's really what they want, to be comfortable and secure and make some money.
That's human nature.
Have you ever heard of? There's this group called Yes Theory. So it's this YouTube group, and their whole idea is to seek discomfort and to not stay comfortable in like what you're doing. So kind of similar to what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, to each his own. I mean, we're in America. There's a lot of money around these days, and people are over-consuming. The planet's heating up, and we care about it, but we're not willing to do, put the mental work into it or anything like that. I mean, people are pretty passive.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
And,
definitely.
So that's our, and there's a lot of really great people that are doing things. A lot of young people doing incredible things. I mean, it's America. You've got all these paradoxes and contradictions continually. But again, rather than looking at it in a depressive way, the way out, of course, I see always the economy is very important to all of us. And if there wasn't for the incredible economy of this new, the new era that we are, and clean energy and anything, we have to do whatever it takes. We have to reduce our carbon and get rid of our carbon as a source of energy. And that's not a simple thing, because we drive to work and we all use petroleum. But the solutions lie in the economy, pretty much what you do here. All your engineers here, they have these great jobs because, collectively we're working towards bringing that thing down.
And so, you've seen, and we'll come back to what you're doing in the 80s, but since we're here talking about this right now, like as time has gone on, you've seen technology grow and stuff, and in the last 5 years all this kind of seems viable suddenly. Like you can have solar that actually, like, that's what we do here. We engineer utility scale solar, which you can use to charge your electric car, power your electric heat, and the reliance on fossil fuel is like tangibly, you can see the end is near. We don't have to do that necessarily.
Well, you look at up in Becker. I remember it was 5 years ago when I started talking about replacing the coal plant up there. And now they have I think the coal plant's going to be decommissioned by 2030, I think. But they've already...
Until they build a data center by it.
Yeah, but they've already built the utility scale solar farm that's going to replace it. And it's, I drive past it often, and it seems like it's operational at this point. So,
I mean, we have an incredible future ahead of us, but people are so much in a funk on everything else. But I don't see anybody really giving a vision of where we're going to go and what we have to do to explore this new future we have, which is a lot of opportunity for everybody. I mean, the key is it all revolves around a good economy.
Right.
And then an economy that's not based on fossil fuels, which are...
Unfortunately, we are right now.
Yeah, we have to right now. I mean, you look at where we've come in 20 years, it's pretty incredible. But the fossil fuels, the dirty, the climate, the whole thing, the wars, the corruption of all that. But that is changing visibly. I mean, as we in solar car, just our habits have changed in 20 years. If you look at biking, walking, biking. Look at Minnesota, Minneapolis, and biking.
He races.
I'm horribly addicted to cycling.
Yeah. And it's incredible where we've come in 20 years and where we'll be in another 20 years. So there's going to be some changes, yes. Our climate is going to change, but that changes. One truth of the world of being a human being is change. Everything changes all the time.
Well, this winter alone, so far in Minnesota, said it's the warmest winter on record in Minnesota.
Yeah,
really,
despite those cold snaps.
With all the cold snaps. It's still
warmer than last winter.
Yeah,
really.
Last winter they said was the warmest on record, and this winter.
Yeah, last winter was great. Yeah. But again, our climate, like we're talking, fluctuates back and forth. But it's generally climate change, which is change.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on, you watching your documentary, was like, for me, it was really powerful. And you've seen, you being there in 1989 on the Larsen ice shelf, and it's just not there anymore.
Right.
Like you've seen in a short span of time, realistically a short span of time of like,
Yeah.
you know, the earth of how climate change is affecting, you know, and that perspective isn't something that the everyday person's going to have because they weren't there. They didn't see the Larsen ice shelf at its glory, and now it
was there, and
now
then
it's
suddenly
open
it's
wide.
gone. I can't even fathom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on the major expeditions I did, you can't do them anymore because the routes don't exist,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
And that's how fast. It's been, I mean, geologically, it's like a quick blink here what's
Right.
happening. I mean, it's going very fast. But I've been on the ice when, you know, it was going
Yeah.
the last 25 years. And that's just part of, you know, the climate change and the changing weather. But I've been the eyewitness to it. And I was able 20 years ago to take that eyewitness account to the public and to schools and conservative audiences, congregations, in order to bring about attention to, well, basically help jumpstart the climate movement, because there wasn't, even all the environmental groups had no idea what climate change was back
Right.
then.
And was this around 1985, kind of 86?
This would be 2002 is
Oh,
when
sure,
it came
sure,
down.
okay.
Yeah, that's when I started. And then, but that's all, of course, changed. I mean, everybody's always talking about climate, and everybody's freaked out about it. But I've seen the changes. But I've done my best to.
Well, you've been very, like, once again, you know, I'm kind of gushing here, but very very impressed with who you are. I mean,
He's a big fan.
big fan. I mean, you're a legend. You're a hero. You know, and like the Arctic or the Antarctic expedition that you did, getting, I believe it was what the 6 countries assigned. You know, the 50-year.
Yeah.
Was it a pact or treaty of like you're not going to develop and you're not going to, you know, go for the resources in Antarctica. You know, and unfortunately that's coming up pretty soon. And
Well, what you're talking about is the Antarctic Treaty, which protects Antarctica, was signed during the Cold War in 1960. It was
Yeah.
a brilliant treaty. It set aside that continent for science only, no nuclear, no military. And they had a clause that in 1990 it was going to be opened up again in case there's anything. So in 1986, 4 years before 1990, the treaty nations met, 27 of them behind closed doors, and they all signed a document to open it up for exploration. So in order to change that, we needed to get all 27 treaty nations to reverse their decisions. And what we did is we organized the Trans-Antarctica expedition. Antarctica had never been crossed.
Yeah.
Shackleton, that was his dream. And we purposely did the longest possible route, 3,700 miles. 6
Which
people.
was incredible.
Yeah, it's a long trip. And it was six countries from, you know, the original signees, from six people from 6 countries. And the long story short, you know, we somehow survived it.
Yeah.
This is before internet, but we had, you know, over half the world was involved in that expedition, and it did the mojo on that. It drawed world attention to the world leaders, and then we met with the world leaders after that expedition over a period of time, and we were able to get all the treaty nations to reverse their decision. Because once we had a couple key ones, China changed, Japan, France, then everyone else started signing. And it was a long process, political process.
Sure.
But the treaty is up for review again in 15 years, but in order to change it, they have to have all
27.
majority, yeah. And that's up to 40-some treaty. So you know, when you lay out a policy, this is why policy is so important. We laid out the next generation energy bill in 2008, which was signed in this state. And the Republicans have been trying to get that rescinded ever since then. We had 94% of the vote, Republican and Democrats, on that policy. But in order to change it, you have to have the vast majority. That's the great thing about that. And the policy is solid, and it doesn't blow away with the political whims of who's around. You have to. I mean, it's a democratic situation. The countries all have to sign.
Well, and you guys, like I was watching that, you weren't just riding along on the sleds. I mean, you were running
skiing.
No,
and skiing the whole way, like the 4,000 miles.
Yeah, there wasn't a place to even ride a sled. That
Right.
I mean, the idea of riding a sled is. I mean, again, you're wearing the dog sound, but
Right.
we're working ourselves too. But our diet was still, we had everything was according to weight. We had still had a kilo for our rations, but we burned through about 6,000 calories a day.
Oh, I
Then
believe
that was break even. I
Yeah.
mean, if we had it, we could have done 8 or more, and a lot of that calories are in fat calories because you need the energy to keep your body warm. Because on an expedition, you're not ducking into a warm room where that warm room warms your clothing and dries your clothing. Your body is the only way that you're going to dry it from your own heat. We're in fuel rations, so we don't have a warm tent. So your body's in this high demand even when it's sleeping. Because when you crawl into a sleeping bag at night at 40 below, that thing is probably about 20, 25 below inside. And your body now has to heat that temperature up.
And you did that for 220
Yeah,
days straight.
120 degrees. And so that there's this demand, natural demand in both dogs and people. The dogs were a little more adapted because their fur was thick.
Yeah.
And they have a natural managing their heat through their breathing hard in their tongue. I mean, that's a normal thing with a dog. So they were actually in some ways better off than we were.
I did have I know this isn't just about the documentary, but I have a ton of questions.
Yeah.
It was super interesting. Like, as I was watching it, when and where and who left you the caches along your trek?
Yeah. So we were referring to crossing Antarctica. So okay, you're going to cross Antarctica with 6 people, 30 dogs, 3,700 miles. And it ended up being 222 days long. How are you going to get the food?
Yeah.
So your range on a sled is strictly weight. I mean, if you did the mathematics, you're feeding 2 pounds per dog. In other words, 10 dogs, 20 pounds for 30 days. That's 600 pounds plus your food and everything else. So the weight is set. So you had to. What we did the first 2,000 miles to the South Pole, we laid out in the summer in real fickle weather, and people have never flown into these areas. We laid out our food caches.
So you did that?
Yeah, we did that. I wasn't there doing it, but Jeff Summers, one of my team members, was in charge of that because we needed someone from the expedition. Actually, we flew with Canadian pilots for that, very expensive, and so we laid out. So on paper, it looked like it was going to be an easy trip, that every 200 miles we'd fill up. And then, because that's, 200 miles is not 250 miles. You can easily travel that if the travel is good. But so what happened is we had 60 days of winter storms.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, we lost 3 of our food caches.
Yeah.
And we're over 1,500 miles from our base camp, which is on the next continent in Chile, South America. We're communicating through a 10-watt radio. There wasn't any satellite or anything like that. And so we'd be radio blacked out for a week or so at a time. So we're on our own. So if we lost the cache, all of a sudden you're expecting a ton of food and it's not there.
Yeah.
Well, like we would normally do is we were still rationing because we had no guarantee.
Yeah.
Then we'd have to super ration to try to make it to the next, because if we lost the second one, we wouldn't live.
Yeah.
But so as a result, we had to travel in this horrendous weather. Some of the weather was impossible to be out. 120 below wind chills is pretty a limit. But we traveled in horrendous conditions.
Yeah.
And we had to make every moment count. Even getting sleds lost in a storm and wasting 3 or 4 hours or a day or so, that could cost your life. So we were in these constant peril and extreme rations, no heat, enough just to milk the water. And by miracle, we survived it. We were a very strong team, and we just, we did it. We had some sort of a providence that we had with us. We felt that, although providence is nice to talk about, and when you're almost out of food, and your dogs are dying, and your people are starting to go on you, all your philosophy and that kind of goes out the door. So it was tough, and but we hung together. And what was important to us is we experienced what the early explorers experienced, and we didn't. I never walked in anyone's footsteps. I always did my own routes. Every expedition I ever did was something that was purposely as challenging as I could find it, and I had no desire of recreating anybody's historical stuff.
Sure.
100 years later. Some people do that, which is great.
Yeah.
But
You wanted to trailblaze your own trail.
yeah, I always traveled my own trail. I always did my own thing, but overall it was a great experience because we survived it. But we became very tight. We were talking about international cooperation. So the most important thing to us was that we end this trip in really good standings and good friendships.
Sure.
Because if we fought like a lot of expeditions end up doing, behind the scenes, you get the movie version of stuff.
Yep.
Oh my God.
I can't imagine the constant stress your body's in, and then to deal with other people.
Social stresses, emotional stresses.
My partner was John Louis Etienne, a Frenchman that I literally ran into on the North Arctic Ocean. That's how we conceived this idea in '86. Him and I were in charge. So there's when you're in charge and leaders, you've got all the responsibility, the press, everything like that. And as a team, we go through the same thing every day, but at night they're sleeping. And you have the response, and they have no idea. Okay, let's just fly in a plane. Well, that's $75,000.
Yeah.
And that we don't and if we do that
This is 1989 too.
Yeah, all this thing, but we weren't. There wasn't a division of leader or whatever. We were the most remarkable group, and our average age was 40. Our strengths were really in our diversity because we were 6 different cultures.
Yeah.
That spoke 5 different languages. We spoke English to various degrees as our communication language. And so with that diversity, we were 40, we were all set in what we're doing. There was no competition. And we had the spirit of commitment and inspiration. And
I think that really showed too, like when towards the end of your expedition, when the Russians were worried about maybe having to rescue you.
Yeah.
And how you all just were like, we'll let the dogs go on the vehicles, but we won't.
Yeah.
That commitment to we're going to see this through.
Yeah, and we had this incredible commitment to it. That was our common goal because this was important, and it was bigger than ourselves. I mean, it wasn't just a make believe. People that bigger than myself. I mean, there's so much verbiage and of everybody out there, but this was a real commitment. We represented our countries and so forth. So we had that type of energy of that commitment, which, I mean, we're the best friends ever. I mean, the 6 of us are so close.
I was going to ask, are you all still fairly close?
Yeah, we get together every about 3 or 4 years. I mean, we're connected always on the internet. Yeah. And so it was a great trip, and then it had a really wonderful, ending when we eventually did get that treaty.
Well, how scary too towards the end when you lost. I can't remember which.
Yeah, Keizo.
Oh, that was
Japanese. Yeah,
I thought. I mean,
he was out for 13 hours.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And he was in better condition than
you guys. I mean, the sense
he must have hunkered down and just stayed, or.
Well, I was a little worried about anti-climax coming in, on the Russian pace, but this was 16 miles from the end. I mean, we were literally there.
Yeah.
And we saw the ocean, everything that day before. It was a beautiful day, and we didn't think we've made it. We knew better. You're in Antarctica, you make it only when you literally cross that finish line. You don't project ahead. And sure enough, a huge storm came up on the high plateau, about 200 miles, from us and south where we came from. It was 78 below already there, and then we were close to the ocean where the ocean was open. So you have a warm, moist air, super frigid, and these 2 systems collided, and we had this horrendous storm. Keizo went out, routine, feed his dogs that evening, and he never came back. And And it was we had put out skis and that, so when you're walking between tents or whatever, because when you're tenting, your tents are together close. You have the tent lines, you have the stakeout dogs that, stakeout chains like 50 feet. You also have an antenna that goes out 60 feet. So when you're in the middle of all this camp, you can't see anything, but so Kazel made a huge mistake. He went from one ski to another, maybe 20 feet apart, which is routine. Mm-hmm. But what is always the rule is when you go from one ski to another in a bad storm like that, you always keep an eye on that back ski, the ski you're leaving from. And he didn't. He just went from one ski to another, then suddenly, when he was in the middle of that storm intensified, he couldn't see anything. And they sat for a while, and he decided, well, he walked.
Yeah.
And by chance, he somehow walked a very narrow window where he didn't trip over any lines. He just went out against the wind. And he disappeared, and we found out later. It was really shocking. And we did a rescue that night, which was dangerous, just having that rescue going. I canceled that at 10 o'clock when it was too dangerous for anyone to be out there. But then, fortunately, we found him alive that next morning. So
did he have frostbite or anything?
No,
or
he was
adverse effects.
He hung in there. He didn't have proper protection, but he had a knife. He dug kind of a hole. Mm-hmm. He couldn't dug the cave, but then his neck would start. The snow would come in. It was just But I figured he'd survive the night. He was young, and he was going to get married. He had a lot of life to him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this was it wasn't like a winter storm. The temperatures weren't too bad. If this was a winter storm, he for sure would have perished in about 3 or 4 hours. But it was the amount of snow. It was kind of a wetter snow, but it was so thick. It was literally like a fire hydrant. If you looked into it, that fraction of a second, it would fill your nostrils, your ears, your hood. It would just literally blow you over. You were just totally disorientated. So it was a very dangerous storm that way, visibility. But, and I organized. We had the Russians there. We had a support team there. We had a lot of people that were there, the French, Russian. Well, we had about 20 people on that rescue. What we did is we strung out a lot. We had climbing. Each tent had a 120-foot climbing rope. We made a 300-foot rope. We anchored it down. And then we would have people about every, 25 feet or less. And then we'd anchor at one end, and then we'd do this sweep where we'd make a 360-degree sweep with people. And then the people, again, Russians, Chinese, Japanese, all vocabulary was tough. But so each person would look in a particular direction, like to your right, and then shout very loud Kazel's name. Mm-hmm. And then I ran up and down the line, making sure everyone was looking in the same direction and yelling. Mm-hmm. Because if one person looks in the wrong direction, there's a chance that you're going to miss him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when we went upwind, and when we found him, I was down where the rope was anchored, starting to work up the rope again. And there was some sort of something was going up in the front. All of a sudden, I thought they were stopping. We still had about 10-degree of the slice to make. So I was kind of, I don't get upset easy, but I was a little perturbed because, this was a serious situation. So I raced ahead to see what's the deal. And when I got closer in the storm, I saw some sort of a commotion ahead of me, a bunch of people. And then to my left, I didn't even know if I saw it for sure. I saw a figure with hands up in the storm. It just appeared, and I instantly, because if this was a mirage, I would have got lost too. But I just went for it without any thought. I saw that figure and went right for it, and that was Kazel. He was standing up, and
what was that sense of relief?
It was beyond anything. And when I came up to him, I was alone, and he's playing his arms up and down, and he's saying, "I'm God, I'm God." And I thought, "Oh God!" I thought maybe he lost his mind. And I picked him up by the waist. His energy was good, and I looked at him. He wasn't frozen. And then the other team members came, and then It was just very emotional. We got him back to these big track vehicles when we got inside, and the 6 of us were around the table, and he was having his warm cup of tea, and and I asked him. I said, "What were you were saying? I'm God. I'm God." Oh, he said, "I meant to say thank God, thank God." So, and he was so embarrassed. I mean, in his journals and his set was, it was a big shame if he died.
Sure.
I mean, if he died, he thought, if I died, if I would have, in the journal he's reflecting, he said, shame, big shame. He wasn't worried about his life. He was worried about the
greater
shame.
mission.
Yeah, he was something. And that was really wonderful. That's in that movie. After Antarctica, actually, you can just go at my name, or After Antarctica is the name of the film. You can get it on Amazon and iTunes or whatever. It's out there. And it's it won a lot of awards. It was very popular in the film festivals, and
It's incredible.
Yeah, we both have seen it, and
Yeah.
it's like exactly the type of cinema that I'm into.
Yeah,
like
same
that was
here.
it was
can
really
you put a
amazing.
link to that somewhere?
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Okay, yeah, because that would be good. People, I think, would really enjoy
I
it.
agree.
It's kind of an undiscovered documentary, although a lot of
And
people
it
have
came
watched
out
it.
in 2024, right?
Yeah, it came out.
21, I think.
21, I think. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and then
Yeah.
I just saw on Amazon it said 2024.
that's when yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So I did one of the things that I wanted to touch on too is just like your expeditions that you take, and so when you filmed like your solo expedition, I was just overly impressed. 77 years old, and you're going on this expedition solo, dragging a canoe full of supplies and 2 other like sleds behind it, and I just, for me, a couple years ago I was at Tedagooch State Park in the winter, and I went and I did like a 2-mile hike into these cabins, and I drug a sled and had snowshoes on, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I'm watching you drag twice the weight. It was very impressive and incredible. So you just leave Ely and you just go up to the Arctic.
Well, I've done probably the most incredible experience in my life is leading international teams of 6. So I did the major expeditions for about 30 years, that type of leadership. I also, prior to that, I did some really amazing trips I didn't really talk about much, but I always had a partner. But right now, I don't have the 3 years to organize major expeditions, so I can say I'm officially, I'm not doing that anymore as of about 10 years ago, because I'm totally committed to the Steger Center and getting this stuff going. But I do continue with solo expeditions. I've done solos throughout my career and that stuff. But I take, really, like 2 years ago, I started up in Ely, just training in that there. But 2 years ago, I left alone. It was 400 miles to the nearest person, dropped off by a friend of mine that's a bush pilot, and dropped me off with 60 days of supplies and 280 pounds. And I was in the winter. I was hauling, and then I would travel all the way through breakup. I had a small whitewater raft with me for rivers, and so I was on my own for 60 days and 800 miles. So there was no chance of any rescue. So I was on, and this is extremely dangerous country if you don't know what you're doing, because I'm going through the country starting in winter, but I'm on the rivers when they're frozen and all the way until when they're breaking up, and when the ice starts, and when they break up, it's there's very few people that have seen this power of these. The water rises sometimes 20 feet, and the amount of ice, river ice, is huge, and it's just beautiful. It's beauty, and it's dangerous, and it's this whole thing. But I have to be in the moment all the time. That's why I do solos, and I'm not doing it this year. I have to stay. The Steger Center is really taking off, so I've got to stay at the helm this year, which is a huge compromise for me. But I have to do what I have to do this year. But so I continue on these solos, and I challenge myself on those. I don't challenge like being first. I just like the challenging route where I have to innovate, and I like more than anything just being present in the nature. And so on these expeditions, my my safety relies on being, as long as I'm in the moment, I'm okay. And also on a solo, I don't have any. My mind's totally free. I don't have a partner or 6 other people that I have to really take my mind to for. And so it's, in a way, it's much safer being alone. Although a team of 6, which I've done, the team was dog slaying with 3 teams of 10 dogs each with 6 people. That's a very strong and quite safe unit, because you got a lot of power there and a lot of people, enough, and yet you're really lean and you travel fast. Mm-hmm. But on the solo, I don't have that responsibility of people, which I don't mind. But if I was traveling with a partner, we would just be talking in the evening. I'm not interested. I can talk in the evening all the time with many people. Mm-hmm. I'm there because I really want this deep experience.
Yeah.
Of just learning. I mean, my whole life has been about learning, and I started as a young kid doing first ascents. That was important to me when I was a teenager, a young 20. But that, I was humbled, and what really drew me was the nature and the true wilderness. So that's what I kept coming back to learn from. It's kind of like a mobile Zen monastery. It's really.
I was gonna. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to ask about the.
Yeah, because it's real. Monastery. A solo, for example, or any expedition, is very rhythmic. It's really quite disciplined.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing every day, but your mind is free. On a team of 6, we have it such that, we get in a rhythm where we do the same thing every day. I mean, we rotate on a team of 6. We always rotate. We have three units, 3 tents. Rotate tent partners about every 6-7 weeks. You have to do that, mm-hmm. or else you get clicks. Mm-hmm. And then once you get clicks, then your work is just starting to begin. Mm-hmm. Then you have all sorts of problems. You have people turning things against you. I mean, things. You have to be aware of certain things. But on the team like this, we do 10 units. But when you have with a partner like Victor from Russia, we would decide, like, okay, I will do the breakfast chores. He does this. So you never have to think about who's doing what. Yeah. You know what you're doing. They know what they're doing. So as a result, the whole day is like, it's just the same rhythm. Mm-hmm. We get at 8 o'clock sharp, we're out. Not a minute before, because if someone goes out a minute before, the other people get uptight. And we made these rules because they're just simple. I mean, they're just a rhythm. So we're out right at 8. That's the only thing where we set our life at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then we have at 1 o'clock we stop for lunch, and 6 o'clock we stop. And those are the rhythms of a bigger team. Mm-hmm. But then the rest of the day then is just, it's just a lot less when you're doing rhythmatically and like that. Less issues come up with everybody.
Sure. And
everybody enjoys the freedom of thought too, because we'll be out in the morning. We had it down that we would, by the time we exited the tent, usually it was like 28 minutes later, we were moving.
Yeah.
I mean, that we got that system down. Mm-hmm. So I would be, I don't watch a clock. Nobody watches. You can't. Everything, clocks freezes on your hand basically. But it's not like we're watching the clock. But we're starting at 8. I can look up almost any time, and everyone else is doing exactly. It's correlated. Mm-hmm. It's a really simple life. Where the mind is free. Our mind is everything but free down here. Mm-hmm. People are just, we're cracking at the seams as a society. Mm-hmm. We're so politically charged, and mm-hmm. people can't get off their devices, and we all know it. Mm-hmm. But, we just got to it's the quiet mind. Mm-hmm. We really have to consciously take a little bit more time for ourselves. If it's a 10-minute walk or a trip in the Bounty Waters, but we got to set those rhythms for ourselves to keep our mind and body solid. And so,
for me, about 10 years ago, I grew up in California, and then I moved to Minnesota, central Minnesota, in 1999. And I didn't know anything about the North Shore or Duluth because nobody's ever taken me. I never heard anything about it. About 10 years ago, I kind of discovered the North Shore and hiking. And it's one of the most therapeutic things that I do. And I like to go alone. Like, people don't really understand that. I like to go hike by myself. Yeah. And sometimes I'll take my boys with me and some friends, but it's always much more rewarding for me to go alone. Yeah. You know,
it's really important for ourselves, I think, to be alone sometimes. You know, when I do solos, I never get lonely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm totally at home with myself. Mm-hmm. I never experience loneliness.
Yeah.
I'm always okay with myself, and I love being with people wherever I'm at. But there's this idea that, you know, you want to be alone like you're a loner. It has nothing to do with that at all. It's a natural thing, because you see people that are always with people and they're lonely as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody
isn't that
is.
an interesting paradox?
Yeah, not everyone is, but loneliness is a big issue with.
Yeah.
And also purpose is another thing. I made a commitment when I was young, in my earlier 20s. I came from an entrepreneurial background, which I talked about, and I didn't see barriers. So in my mind, I could do whatever, and I knew I could,
whatever.
Yeah, but I knew I could make money in all this. But I made a conscious decision that my purpose was around education and so forth. That I didn't see myself as retiring when I was 65. In fact, I didn't worry about that at all when I was younger. I think that's sometimes when you're thinking about too much projection ahead is kind of stifles you in the moment. But I had a life of purpose all the through, and I knew that through my life of purpose I would be extremely rich. Mm-hmm. So when I got into my 60s in that, which is ironic in the 60s, and I mean, people that are 65 don't have a purpose. They retire.
They retire to do what?
Yeah, it's difficult.
Nothing?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's a real challenge for all of us, I think, because purpose. But I was fortunate because I had this purpose, and that also gave me a lot freer mind. I didn't have to think, okay, I knew that I would meet people, and this whole thing would happen.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about your
Steger Center.
Yeah,
thank you.
I thought that's where you were going with
that.
Yeah, because that's a thing that's coming up now soon to the grand opening and
the Steger Center. The official title, we call it the Steger Center, but it's my original goal, vision in my life on the center was about 40 years ago. I was successful in the school. I could have done that for the rest of my life and supported myself. But, after 8 years of that, it's kind of done that, been there. But but as a teacher, I was reaching people, but about maybe 80 people a year. But I just felt that I had my potential was larger than I had more capacity than, and I met the 80 people or so were real intimate relations, because even today, whenever we meet on the street or whatever, it's still like old friends. So it was a great thing. But I had a bigger vision of that, and the vision that I had was, I felt with my life 40 years ago, and I could make, my biggest purpose would be to create this center in the wilderness and to bring, the higher level decision makers. It could be state, national, maybe eventually international leaders. Because if I could affect small groups of, let's say, 12 maximum, if I could affect leadership at that high level, I could have the biggest effect with my life and everything I've worked with. So I went about building the Steger Center. I never talked much about it, but my first 35 years I funded it all myself. Mm-hmm. And
when did construction start on it? Actually,
in 1988. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then when the COVID came along, according to plan, I had planned to give it all away to a nonprofit. So during the COVID, I had the access from Faegre Drinker Law Firm. I've always worked with Faegre and our nonprofits, and so I had access to a couple of attorneys during the COVID, and I then was able to turn that officially over. Mm-hmm. All my assets of land, everything I owned, I basically just gave it to the nonprofit, which is a public, organization run by a board. And then starting 3 years ago, I started raising more money. It's still, raising money is really tough. I mean, as you expand, I'm building out administration, but as you expand, you need more money.
Right.
It's almost like, it's almost a never-ending curse of my life. But it also, it's also a raising money. Either it's a nonprofit, for-profit. It's very humbling, but it's a very important experience because it's the only way you launch an idea and a project. Most people fail in their mind and their thinking, and they can't, they can't get it funded or organized. But I'm good at logistics and that. So I'm now starting with my first pilot programs, the leadership programs, in 2026. I have one program actually this summer. So that is coming. That's coming along pretty well. And then I also run the last 40 years programs in the summer because I've been building the center. I've worked with a lot of craftspeople, and I do a lot of that work myself and fine woodworking and that. But whenever I had a crafts person or whenever I was working on a major project, we would always have apprentice, people that are learning, particularly people that are interested in the trade. So over in the summertime, we work a lot with job-ready type skills. We work with a program called Summit Academy, OIC, on the north side. That's a 20-week, the program we work, it's a 20-week program, mainly inner city, tuition's free. And then they do 10 weeks of classroom, 10 weeks of basically on-the-job training. And so we have the groups up their last 3 weeks on the job training. And then they get, after the 20-week course, they have over a 90% placement. So it's a way for...
Great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a way to... It's a gateway into middle-class wages. Because they can enter now in the construction world at 23, 24 an hour. And if they're on fire, they can make a living, do their own job. And it's also all equitable. I mean, it's a really, really great to see people, moving up the ranks and being on fire. And again, it's economics. And I saw it 20 years ago, too, with the economic boom and the way the economy now. You try to get an electrician or a plumber or construction person. I mean, and that's endless because our new economy, that we're creating, we need electricians, and we're rebuilding. We're rebuilding the whole structure. So that provided the economy to bring people out of poverty. Summit's part of that program, and that's my motivation. I do a lot of job-ready skills for women. I have some great women craftspeople that have worked for me over the years, and then we in turn have trained some of our younger people, apprentices, in their 20s, 30s, in stonemasonry or wherever that might be. And they a lot of our instructors are our past students that come along, and they're now in the trade, and now they teach. So summertimes are really busy up there. Because that's all around building out the thing. But my main goal in my life, my purpose in my life, is really to build that Steger Center for higher level, top level leadership, and we need for this higher level leadership, we need quiet spaces for that. You can't do it in a resort with all the stuff going on. So that's the real niche of the Steger Center is by purpose we are remote, and it's in that silence of the surrounding wilderness and the group and this whole thing together is where, I look at it, you attain a quiet mind. A quiet mind doesn't mean void of silence. It's basically a void of self, of what you if you can just drop yourself. When you're a leader, you need to be a proper leader, and we're all leaders. And that quiet mind, that space of the wilderness and all that, that's what unique to the center. And then I'm doing just I have ideas. I've worked in leadership most of my life, but I have to do, in order to really understand where our sweet spots are, I have to do 3 or 4 years, I feel, of the original, maybe up to 3 years original programs, and then concentrate all the time, as we get more and more.
So looking forward for the Steger Center, I think we're very interested in this. I think it sounds extremely cool. So you said you have a program starting already this summer in 2025.
Yeah. I'm just doing one programming. I mean, for the center, I'm doing actually it's for entrepreneurs, and it's entrepreneur can be anyone from 20 to 80, so it's open. But entrepreneurs that have been successful in whatever their project might be, but they're going on, I call it the next chapter, where they're moving on to another project.
Yep.
Yeah. So this will be a total of 12 of us, and everyone will have some experience or big experience in their original field. And then so we would all present our project, talk about it so everybody knows. And then throughout that 4 days, and you discuss as a group or whatever. I mean, it's kind of leadership is all about relationship building.
Yes.
And
that's a core tenet here at EVS.
Yeah. And especially like in this situation, you get like-minded people together. Yeah. And boy, it's all about that inspiration.
Right.
It's creating the best situation for, I call it lightning to strike within a group where you start having insights. And again, we're focused around one, our commitment is defined by the next chapter. It could be some sort of a treaty for Antarctica coming up, and but this one was an easy one to organize because there I have a lot of people that are I know that would fit that.
Are the folks in all 12 people that are attending? Are they all in a similar space as far as what they're doing, or is it a
mix of people?
Okay.
Yeah. They're around this one's from around the country.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've got maybe 2 or 3 from Minnesota. And they're all people that, all very interesting people. I mean, I relate to people, risk takers, the entrepreneurs that have these ideas. I mean, this is what America's about. We all can do that, and we all have that privilege to do that. And so, I'm in good company in that situation.
And this program was something that the people that were that are coming to it, did they see? Did you select them, or did they see an opportunity to?
Yeah.
Hey, we can just go.
Yeah, I'm working with a good friend of mine, Dan Butner. Dan runs what's called Blue Zones, and it's just hard to explain his program, but he, you see a lot of what Dan does. So Dan does it. Dan's really active. He's got a lot of friends and stuff like that, and so he has a lot of input. And we're kind of putting together our address books and just putting the invite out to see, hey, are you free at this time? Would you want to come? So it's real relaxed. It has nothing to do with, a huge treaty or some nut we have to crack. How we're going to do it.
How long is the program?
It's only 4 days. So
4 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, anything could be. I think a real working program to me should be something like Saturday to Saturday. That way you've got six days to work with.
Sure.
And when you're doing something really heavy, that's a long time. But in that 6 days, that gives you a lot of freedom to do different things. Like there might be a day where you don't even go inside. You might be in the wilderness somewhere, walking or whatever it might be. But you have to have. In these sessions, you have to rely on a lot of flexibility, because you have a plan going in, but once it goes, you might go. You never know where you're going to go from there. But you have that flexibility though. But there, we have the wilderness and trail systems and that. And
well, Ely's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
There's so much up there.
Yeah.
I did a feasibility study. 2020 at the Carlson School of Management, and there were younger people, 23, real smart, brilliant, but they said, this ain't going to work. You have to have a golf course, because they were researching, but they were totally right, because in your resort, or you get anyone to go to a conference, you need the golf course and the bar, the wine bar.
Yeah.
But I said, no, we have the golf course. It's our trail system.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a area that you play off of, which is the wilderness and not the golf course. And the golf course is something that's relationship building, but it's not higher level what we're doing, because this is really more of an intimate space.
Yeah.
And then, so we're here at EVS. So you know Dennis Kim, right?
Very well, yeah.
And where is the connecting point with you and Dennis Kim?
Dennis was at the very beginning when I first came down to the city. Nothing was going on and anything. There's just very few people that. But Dennis had, he was in solar. He was way ahead of his time. This was just a much smaller organizations. So I was doing whatever the meetings and people were. I was there, just as you do as an activist. And it was through that early days. Dennis Kim was there, and I saw him again, and him and I became good friends. He's my earliest supporter. Mm-hmm. He gave me $100 at the beginning, and that was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And then we became very good friends with Dennis' family, his generosity, the company here. I watched this company, because this was a model. What Dennis was doing, well, that was a model, and I knew it was going to be just like this. You can say right place at the right time, but if you're an entrepreneur, that's the start of it. He was the one that developed, took the risk, and it's amazing. It's a fine example, because EVS, all the engineers, everybody that is part of this operation is helping to drive carbon down. You have a good lifestyle. They're generous here. Engineer wages are good, and it's a good model. If you want a good job, get an engineering degree, and Dennis is one of the employers in that. So I have that last 20 years, he's visited me a number of times. He's brought up Korean students that have stayed with us for a while, and so it's old home week for me being here.
One other question I have for you, Will, is so you're involved in a lot of things, but you also do solo expeditions where you have time to lose the self, as you said. How do you balance doing a lot and then kind of, in a way, not doing nothing, but like removing yourself from this world and going into this world? And how do you keep everything contiguous?
Yeah, that's a very good question. First of all, I look at my world as the complete world. This is part of what I do in my world, and down here, interviewing and my social world. And it's a world too because I'm raising money on that. You could call it stress, but I handle that pretty good. And then you have the world of the wilderness, which is a different world, but it's still my same world. So I have not too much problem almost seamlessly going one from another, because I'm still, when I'm here, I'm not in Ely. When I'm in Ely, I'm not here. Put it that way. I don't take the woods or my incredible solar expedition. I take it with me in terms of everything I've learned from it. But I don't live, someplace where I'm doing one thing in my mind, I'm somewhere else. I just, because I'm in the moment a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned on expeditions. And so, I adjust to it that way. And I'm here. So I don't mind it. I like Minnesota, my home, and Minneapolis, Twin Cities especially. I have a fondness for this area. I've seen it grow, my whole life. But I did a lot of work, international and national. And 20 years or 24 years ago, when I came down here for the climate, that's the first time I really worked locally. It's where I really like working, and that's where I really wanted to keep it that way. I don't have any. I don't like to be on the road as much.
Yeah,
I've done there, and it's just a hassle on planes. But whatever. I mean, there's a health issue when you're traveling around too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, I would say I looked at my compromise of spending 6 months down here. It is a compromise on my health, but I keep active. The air is, it's whatever, I mean, it's a better city, but I don't in the city itself. I don't do anything where, I'll run a little bit maybe or something, but I don't like air, breathing in a lot heavy into the air. But but I'll do okay. And I just keep simple, and I keep in shape by just simple rhythms. I try to get the proper amount of sleep if I can. And sometimes you don't, your life's not your own sometimes, and but then you can, on a weekend or whatever, you can. But you gotta take care of your sleep, your food, your exercise, the basic walking, and eating, trying to eat simpler, and not being too hard. Break your rules once in a while. I mean, I think people need a little more self-control. I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean, discipline.
We live in the land of abundance. And people take advantage of it all too much.
But I think so. But I'm not saying over-discipline, because being over-disciplined is the same thing.
Yeah.
You're just become a stiff, and but you've got to, like I say, break your rules sometimes. But you do have to have a little more self-control. People, we just need that. I mean, just as to function as human beings.
Yeah.
You can't be just doing whatever you want all the time. And I mean, people are. What's happening is I think the tail is wagging the dog. I mean, with people, sometimes when you're supposed to be the dog wagging the tail. I'm saying that, and it means that we've got to be in charge a little bit more of our life. I think, and that's where the outdoors comes in. That's why we're all privileged to be living in Minnesota. Because we have that type of thing, but I do straddle. It's like straddling two icebergs with your one on each foot sometimes.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
So looking forward, obviously you've had a very storied career and been involved in 100 million things that we'll get to on the 10-episode docuseries that we're doing, right? So looking forward, we're in the utility scale solar space. I think we feel great about where we're going, but what is your perspective on climate and renewable energy as we move forward? You're optimistic?
Of course. I mean, this economy, with or without the politics, is going to grow, because it's where the money's at. It's where the future's at. You're not doing it because you're afraid of the bears dying. Some people will, but that isn't what drives the market, and we have the market on our side, and we're making a lot of progress. We're in an unusually charged political thing that we got to deal with. I mean, it's painful to see our country on both ends, and maybe the changes we're seeing, maybe people will start coming together a little bit better, because. The fact was, if we want to look politically, before the election, we were going off the edge on climate. We were over the edge, and it was getting, so, and we're in the same situation now. I mean, we do have to relook at this thing a little bit more, I think, in terms of a population in the United States. And I was saying, is the changes here, who knows what's going to happen, There's going to be probably some pain in certain things, but we need to do something here, and maybe out of all this, we can unite more as American people. That's my hope. I think the two fringes on both left and right, everybody is hungry to be just to be with people, and may I conclude that. The one thing I have the ultimate faith is the human spirit. You cannot put the human spirit down. I mean, you can put it down for a while. You can put it down for 100 years, or for a moment if you're whatever. But the human spirit it's just there.
Yeah.
It'll flip back up. So that's encouraging. That's one thing I've learned, and we have to support each other more.
Yeah.
But above all, we have to be tolerant to those that we sort of demonize, both left and right.
Yeah.
We have to accept the rural people, and the rural people vice versa. I mean, this is Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it's spiritually, it's not a sound deal right now, and that this will all come about, I think, in the right way. And I'm optimistic. I mean, there's a lot of issues now, but. What we don't have is a futuristic projection of what this incredible future is going to look like.
What are we working towards, right?
Yeah. And what is this future? That's what the Steger Center is about. Because we can't solve even today's problems, let alone tomorrow's problems, with our present thinking.
Right.
Our present thinking and our present way is not the future. I mean, we're just digging this hole. And that's what all we're seeing is that we don't see the future being projected. And how are we going to, and we won't solve the problem, but how do we adapt and flourish? We can still flourish. Human beings aren't going to disappear unless we get into a nuclear thing. Yeah, but we're going to be around for a very long time. And so, I just keep working. And I mean, having worked in the environment all my years, it's like pushing a heavy ball up the slope, and sometimes things go well, and sometimes the ball comes back and crushes your feet, and it hurts like hell. But you just got to keep. You got to keep
relentless forward progress.
Yeah, the relentless without even thinking about it. You just got to keep your. But above all, we need community, and we need friends, and we need to really connect in times of hardships.
Well, Will, I'm really happy that you joined our podcast today.
Yeah.
I'd have something for you.
Oh, he has something for you.
I wanted to give you a couple goodies.
Okay.
It's an EVS tumbler.
Oh, okay, good.
And then an EVS
Oh,
shirt.
is this Dennis's?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of those.
Oh, yeah.
So we just wanted to thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'll put this neatly in the shop next to my EVS regular mug. This is a good mug.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Awesome.
Good interview, by the way. It
Yeah.
was-
Yes.
Thank you.
Went by easy. It wasn't stressful.
Great. Well, from all of us here at EVS, we'd like to thank Will Steger for joining us today in the Sounds of Solar podcast. I'm your host, Christoph Bruin. With me, as always, Russell Hamilton, what are you doing with your hands? Nothing? Great. And
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Of course, we missed Prahalad. He'll be back soon, so if you need your dose of Pradi, he's going to be back soon. So we'll see you. Yeah.
Hopefully. I don't know when he comes home.
Probably March.
March.
We'll see. All right. So from all of us here, thank you. Like, share, subscribe, do the thing, whatever. And then we'll see you next time on the Sounds of Solar podcast.
Peace.